Boy, it's been a great 24 and a half hours. My goal is to not make the last half hour suck. And also, wow, not only am I here on a eclipse day, I'm between you and drinks. So this is rough, I'm just gonna say. But we're gonna do our best. So again, thank you for the kind introduction, Radney. Some of you I do know because you're local. Most of you actually I don't. So quick intro, I've been in tech almost 40 years, almost 40. 10 in big tech, did some startup stuff, and for about the last 20 years, I've had the privilege to lead this company, SailPoint, from 3 of us with a whiteboard, venture capital, unexpectedly private equity, that led to the first ever IPO for Thoma Bravo. Many of us know that firm. It's a pretty successful PE firm these days. 5 years as a public CEO, unexpectedly taken private again by Thoma Bravo 2 years ago at almost 25 times the price they paid the first time. So that's called happy investors. And then we are private, probably on our way back to an IPO. So I've had the privilege to do a lot of things people do over the course of their career. I've just had the weird privilege to do them in one company, which is really weird, but it's been fun. I'm a little bit of a history buff. You're gonna see how that plays in. Not crazy about it, but one of the things we've all heard over the years is the famous Winston Churchill, those who don't learn the lessons of the past are doomed to repeat them. We're gonna talk a little bit about that in this context. And the reason I've been an early, I guess not from the very beginning, but long time supporter of Culturati is I'm a big, passionate workplace culture guy. There need to be more of me in the room. No, I don't mean old white people, I mean CEOs. I've been in a lot of rooms where there was about 90% CHROs and a couple of CEOs. Get your bosses here. I would encourage you, get your bosses here. They need to hear this. So the one qualification I don't have is I am not particularly good at telling the future. If I could do that, I would probably quit this and go work on Wall Street. But I think we can learn some valuable lessons by looking at the past as we talk about this concept of how tech impacts performance and culture, and particularly in the context of AI. So let's go back to go forward. Some of you don't know what the heck that is. Some of you do. That's called an early PC. How many of you in the room, kind of embarrassing, remember the advent of email? Like before, oh God, thank God, there's a few of you in here. Okay, anybody want to venture a quick guess? What does CC stand for? Somebody under 30, tell me, what does CC stand for? Carbon copy. Did you ever see a real carbon copy in your life? No, you did not. We used to actually literally print copies and then send memos around. That's where that term came from. And one of the things, we're gonna come up with a theme, email was amazing technology. It changed how we communicated, it broadened it, it sped it up, it did a lot of stuff. But one of the things that nasty little CC thing did was it paved the groundwork for drowning in email, which nobody saw coming when they were super excited about email. Email was so new. I remember getting like 5 emails. Wow, I have 5 to go through now. This is so exciting. So like it was a really rapid transformation from a technology that was super productive and super powerful and super helpful to rapidly like, wow, this is kind of overwhelming and maybe even burdensome. So, interesting early learning about here's some great new technology, let's dive in, implement it as quickly as possible, as broadly as possible, but then this secondary effect thing. And a theme we're gonna talk about is what are some of the unintended consequences and never forgetting the human element. At first, this thing was obviously designed to make all of the humans in our organizations more productive, but pretty quickly it wasn't totally clear if it actually was making us more productive. It was sort of sucking us down. Another very quick example, again, how many of you like me remember actually walking into a bank to do things like deposit checks, get cash? Everybody remember that? Super cool, right? You had this concept of a relationship with a banker. And then these suckers showed up, right? Super cool, ATMs, automated teller machines. Why talk to a human when everything I can do through a machine? Banks rushed to implement them everywhere, technology everywhere. But then, all of a sudden the banks figured out, wow, I don't know my customers. I haven't seen them in a long time. I remember my son-in-law, who grew up in a small town in Alabama, because his dad was this way, had been taught, you go into a bank to do things. And this kid is 33, okay? And I remember telling John, like, dude, like, nobody does that. He goes, but then how do you know the person that you're dealing with? I'm like, wow, we quit asking that question about 40 years ago. For the most part, like, I don't need to know the person. I just need to do stuff for this was mostly obviously checking, not investing, but this idea of the banks in this case, not the people, not the consumers, rushed to adopt a technology, man, there was this secondary downside. They didn't necessarily think through entirely correctly. And so once again, we've got the person who maybe was not that they weren't considered, this was presumed to be productive and helpful, right? But all of a sudden there was this secondary effect on the people that the purveyors of the technology hadn't really anticipated. They kind of missed the human element. Okay, let's zoom forward a little bit, pun fully intended. What happened a few years ago? This pandemic thing, and no planning, no real forethought, just suddenly, wow, we got to shift how we're doing stuff around here. What's happening? Wow. So from immediately, maybe some of us had dabbled in remote, maybe we had a little sense of working remotely effectively, and gosh, those conference calls weren't totally great. Certainly wasn't great when you had 9 people in a room and 1 person on a conference call. Those people often felt like they weren't super part of the thing going on there, right? So we shifted to this awesome new thing, Zoom, or with all due respect to my Microsoft colleagues in the room, Teams, which I think is kind of running away with it in some ways in the corporate world. And so we begin relying rapidly, in this case, less by choice than necessity, but at first, and we had some great dialogue on this last night at dinner, wow, this is awesome. This is so productive. This is changing how we do work in a great way, because look how productive people are. And then, once again, the secondary effects start showing up. Everybody remembers Zoom fatigue? Still, maybe some of us are living it. And we learned, like I say, no matter what your view of the longevity of human life on the planet, whether that's measured in millions of years or tens of thousands of years, either way, we spent a long time learning how to communicate with body cues and body language and emotions that aren't always in the spoken or written word. Most of that went away, didn't it? All of a sudden, you're trying to get to know new people without some of that. Not so easy, right? And so, yes, it was super productive, and there's a lot of benefit, and we are certainly not going backwards. But again, relatively rapidly, I think we've also seen some of the downside of, hey, this is great, but it does have some negative ramifications as well. So, matter of fact, there's a slightly different version of this from my McKinsey folks. I won't spend a lot of time here. I found this with nobody from Gartner in the room, right? With all due respect, I haven't gotten a lot of super insightful things from Gartner over the years, but this was one. I thought this was super helpful. 2 flavors of work, working collaboratively and working independently, 2 places to work, together or separate. And this has been a pretty helpful framing for us as we've thought about what kinds of work maybe are best suited to certain kinds of environments. Sometimes, as we've all learned, there's benefits to people working in the office or in the same location, I'll just say, who aren't necessarily working together, because that's where you get that serendipity and that unexpected connection and the emotional, I always call that the connective tissue of the organization. Sometimes it's just people developing those little cues and connections. On the flip side, we've learned that sometimes you can work together apart quite effectively with Zoom. And when you have a global organization over a lot of time zones, wow, that's pretty powerful, right? So I think we've learned to think about, okay, there's a lot of different options now, but either way, once again, we had to wrestle with the human element, because this is a new thing, by the way. I think we're balancing now a lot, which is what my little early career IBM experience taught me, balancing as a leader the needs of the business with the needs of the individual. Some of our individuals in our organizations would say, I never need to come to an office. Some of us in the business would say, sometimes you need to connect with your team. And how do we navigate between what they think and what sometimes the business leaders think? But again, as we heard earlier, any business leader that thinks we all need to be all back in the office all the time probably isn't going to be in their job a lot longer, in my humble opinion. I think that's going to be a very difficult thing to defend. So how do we navigate this as we think back in history? Now let's look forward. So I've heard there's this AI thing going on. Have you guys heard about this? Matter of fact, what's funny is, like, good night, I'm like 10 minutes into my talk and I finally got to AI. That's the longest I've taken to get to AI in a conversation in months. Usually it's the second or third sentence. Hey, what are you guys doing about AI? So we're all wrestling with this, right? And this was also pointed out. I'll just make a quick observation. I don't know if these terms are quite terms of art these days or not. Remember, I'm not a super deep technologist nor a CHRO, so sorry, you're going to get what you're getting. There's artificial intelligence, I still like the term, where it's completely independent of human interaction, truly autonomous. And then there's this augmented intelligence. And I think we're all seeing more and more, that's probably going to be the more common implementation thought of how do you bring this technology alongside people to make the people better, more effective, maybe work faster. than they had. And so as we think about this at SailPoint, and I'm gonna just give a few quick examples here, we're almost in no cases fully replacing humans with AI, but we're trying to supercharge a lot of their work with AI. And let me just go through a few quick examples for a moment. So one in our world is connecting to a lot of stuff. SailPoint, you don't need to know about it. We're not here to do a pitch today, but we're in identity security, and we just protect a lot of applications and data in large enterprises. So one of the things we have to do is connect to all of these things. Well, it turns out it's kind of hard to write connectors to a bunch of things if you're in technology. And one of the things we're quickly learning is, wow, maybe the technology can help us do this faster by learning from the patterns of all the connectors we've already built. Matter of fact, I learned something developing this pitch. Anybody in the room know what GPT stands for? Oh, you're all busted like me. We've all been running around saying chat GPT, and nobody knows what it stands for. Generally pre-trained model. Go impress your CTO buddy with that one when you get home. What it means is the whole data science thought here is you're going to generally pre-train a model, and then you're going to feed it lots and lots of data, and that's how you're going to have the model teach you things about whatever it is you want to teach. So this is a good application for us, right? We've built 20,000 connectors to all these systems for our large customers around the globe, and now we're thinking, wow, we can accelerate that with a GPT model and get better and faster at doing this. Pretty good application of AI. Here's another one. This one actually came up in one of the other talks the other day here. And there's actually, I think, a tech company or two here doing this. AI involved in recruiting and talent. I think this is a really interesting one, right? On the one hand, a little different than that last example, it's not just kind of straight up better, faster code. As we all know, there's a bit of art as well as science in the world of recruiting and talent, right? So how can we get some speeding up, some capability faster? At SailPoint, we call this talent mapping, right? Historically, our recruiters have manually scanned through resumes, using LinkedIn tools, all kinds of stuff. And we're thinking, can the AI tools, based on our culture, based on our job descriptions, based on the ways we think about work, help us do a fine-tuned job of toning in on a tighter, more interesting group of candidates? No offense, I don't know if anybody's gonna do this. We're not gonna let the AI tool tell us to make an offer, right? We're gonna say, okay, now let's get the humans involved, go meet the person, make sure we got a cultural fit, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's a human element here, this augmented intelligence that makes a lot of sense. And by the way, I think, yeah, again, since your people have a hell of a lot to do with your culture, outsourcing your culture to AI, really bad idea, in my humble opinion. Okay, keep going. Last couple examples. This is a very interesting example. I think we're all talking about it a lot. Communications, right? And this has come up even today, again, a couple topics in the meetings. Can we move faster to get things done with AI? And it's basically the first draft idea. Can you feed AI tool a bunch of information about what it is you're trying to create? Could be an email, could be a web page, could be a Keynote. But I did not do that. I'm just going to be really straight up with you. I did not do that. But this idea of drafting and revising is very common. And so if you can get a jump start on that with a tool that helps that author, I'll just call him an author for the moment, get there faster and have to just fine tune something that's 70% there, that's a huge productivity gain in a lot of situations. I think we're going to see a lot of this. We're not reducing our PR team or our communications team. We just think they'll get a lot more productive and get things done faster and better with tools like this. And then the last simple example, which interestingly enough doesn't apply to our business, but I think applies to so many, is customer service, right? We've all seen the joy of when we outsourced customer service to a person who we could not understand, who didn't seem to know what our problem was other than to read a script. That did not work terribly well. And so now I think what we're going to see is AI much more intelligently front-ending, maybe even deep into some of these customer service processes, making doctor's appointments, refilling prescriptions, helping you make more intelligent hotel reservations. In certain industries, I think this is going to be pretty transformative in customer service. For us, frankly, we're in a super deep technology. Almost every customer is a little bit of a unicorn and different, so we can't probably use this as heavily. We'll use it to try to hone in on some customer service things, but not at the same level of high transaction consumer-facing companies. I think it's going to be a lot more relevant. So let's begin to kind of think about what does this mean and where do we go from here. So hey, it is Culturati. Let's end on culture, shall we? The common theme here was as you're thinking about the adoption of any technology, and as we look back in history, I don't think we always did a great job thinking about the secondary, if not primary, human element of how we adopted technology. Matter of fact, here's a little helpful thought framework for you, maybe, if you've heard it, probably you have. Helped me for the last quite a few years. It's important when you're wrestling with an issue to differentiate a problem that can actually be solved and a tension which can only be managed. This is not a problem we're gonna solve. What should I do with AI? And there's an answer waiting to be discovered. Nope. I think this is gonna be a tension we're gonna be managing for quite some time. There's this technology, it's got tremendous power, it's gonna change some things. Pause button, let's stop and think a minute about what might be some of the unintended consequences or downsides. This is not a Luddite, for those of you really old, you know what that term means. This is not a Luddite thought of avoid technology because it's scary and dangerous. It's a think about the positives and the potential downsides if you're thinking about it. Don't over-rotate would be another way to think about this, because we spent a day and a half or a little over a day talking so much in many great conversations about the importance of people. The last McKinsey session I was in, it was great. Like, we spend a lot of time in leadership in the financial organization managing capital, Bill said, financial capital. We spend far less time in most leadership teams talking about human capital. Is that smart or is that stupid? I'm sorry, we can't say stupid anymore. Is that less intelligent? Perhaps. So people aren't changing. They crave connection. They crave the desire to be together and work together, and yet we can sometimes fall prey to, but this will make us, quote, more productive. Well, be careful, right? Productivity is not the only measure of success in an organization. And I think the other thing here is that we're here at Culturati, I'll say it again, right? We're thinking about the impact on culture, right? What's culture? Eugene, did we actually define that at the beginning of the conference? I don't know if we did. What's culture, right? I love the simplest definition I heard somewhere a few years ago, which is culture is how we do things around here. That captures a lot. It's how we think about leadership. It's how we think about developing products. It's how we think about treating our customers. It's how we interact with each other. It's the way we treat each other. It's the way we treat our customers. So a strong company culture, we all know, especially in this room, keeps people motivated, keeps them excited, passionate. They want to give their time, this engagement concept we spent so much time talking about. But as we've seen, new tech, the stuff we've seen in the past, AI is the hot thing today. I know we're saying it's transformational, it's going to change everything in a decade. Anybody want to bet me in 5 years there's another buzzword? Anyone? Anyone? Right? And this idea that too much too quickly might have some downside. So I think what we're all feeling is this tremendous pressure to rush to implement this stuff as fast as we can. And as you'll see, my thought is this super helpful, ridiculously silly idea of, you're right, what you should do is proceed aggressively with caution. Huh? What'd you say? I say it again. The go, proceed aggressively. The pause, with caution. What does that mean? Well, don't be afraid of new tech. I guarantee you there's a lot of people in your organizations at the worker level, probably less the sub-35-year-olds, but at the worker through the executive levels that are a little terrified right now. They're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What does this mean? Am I gonna lose my job? You gonna outsource my job? You gonna take away my job? What's that mean? On the other side, there's probably some massive aficionados who are like, we just need to do everything with AI tomorrow. Probably like the work from home never, work from home always extremes, I would advise against either extreme. Rarely is extremes the best way to go. Notwithstanding Walter's talk about assholes winning. I'm gonna leave that one alone from yesterday. So I think the challenge for all of us is how do you dip your toes, maybe your whole leg, into the water while you're kind of looking for ways to do that in ways that don't present too much short-term risk, because I think we are not yet beginning to fully understand the potential downsides of some of this stuff. Again, don't run away from it, but think a little more carefully before somebody in the org talks you into, we should shift everything into this. Everything? Tomorrow? You sure? So how do we think about this? And to tie this topic with another one we talked about a lot earlier, the shifting workplace dynamics, the how we work, where we work, are people together, what do our offices look like in the future? There's so many shifting dynamics right now. I think this idea of proceeding aggressively with caution is really helpful advice on many of these shifting dynamics. Again, I think the CEOs, thankfully I did not make this particular mistake, they came out pretty quickly and said, we're never going back to offices, or we're all going back to offices. Not probably the right thing, right? Let's take the good that we can understand. It's taking us a minute to unpack some of what we can understand, and let's be careful of some of the unforeseen downsides, the unintended consequences. I think that absolutely applies here as well. So how do we greater businesses, make bigger impacts, advance ourselves against our competition? AI probably is going to help us do that in a lot of ways. By the way, we happen to be in the security business. AI is also one of the biggest threats we've all seen in a long time. If we can move faster, so can the bad guys. Oh boy, gear up. So it can also, I think, if we're thinking about it carefully, I heard a few things earlier today, and I didn't want to challenge too much, but I said, well, AI is clearly going to benefit culture. Some, and maybe it will have some detriments on culture. Give it a minute, right? So as we wrap it up, and then I'll see if y'all have any questions, or the more likely, can we please just go have a drink? How do you think about this technology, but I would tell you more technologies are coming. This is not the end of new technology for those of us in the technology business. How do you think about seeing this history lesson of, yep, there's some good stuff that we can do if we adopt this, maybe fairly rapidly, but quite often we've seen secondary or unintended consequences, and how do we at least do our best to reason through and think about those before we kind of wholesale jump in? So I'll leave you with proceed aggressively with caution when it comes to AI in your culture. All right, thanks very much. I'll see if you've got any questions. This will be fun. Who's the brave person who wants to ask the question? Goes, really, dude? Can we just go get a drink? Really? But if you have a question, I'd be more than happy to have one. Oh, Eugene, you're making everybody else mad, but you're the boss. You used to do that.
Is this on? Yeah.
There you are.
So, I remember the productivity gains from email. And I mean, when I think of that technology, you started here. And gosh, Misty and Annie and Sarah and everyone on our team, I should be more, have had great productivity gains already through ChatGPT.
Yep.
As you say, first drafts of everything.
Yep.
Are you and you've got back in you've got software developers as well.
We have
so aren't you guys, are you seeing it accrue to the corporate bottom line
Absolutely.
yet?
Oh yeah, well, to the bottom line yet. We're rapidly adopting AI in multiple parts of the technology parts of our business, absolutely. But because, as Grady, our chief product officer, said once, hey, we're a security company. It's not like if we're a candy company and we have ChatGPT generate something on our website and it's a little wrong, oops. We get something wrong, right. Like Fortune 100 companies' data is at risk. We're going to be a little more cautious, maybe, about how fast we let these things go unmonitored into reality and production. But are we leaning in on it? Again, simple things like connectors, simple things like, believe it or not, in our world, people have to kind of verify who has the right access to information. This happens in all of your companies if you're in large companies. Quite often, managers are asked to verify, should Eugene have access to server X9382? I don't know what is that, is what most business managers are presented with. We're using AI to say, I can tell you that actually means access to the corporate HR payroll, right? So I mean, we're gonna use AI to help bridge stuff by digging in, but I'm saying, and I'm talking to more and more tech leaders who I think have this mindset of, yeah, I want to move pretty fast, but I'm not sure I fully understand where some of this could have a downside that I don't fully understand.
I know your chief people officer is here. I mean, Abby, are employees worried about losing their jobs?
I don't think they're worried about losing their jobs. I think they're excited about the opportunity to do more impactful work more early in their career.
That's my amazing chief people officer over there, by the way.
Exactly. And last question here, Mark, is I mean, given that you guys are about cybersecurity and one of the leading companies in the world on that, so what kind of threat does this present to?
Significant. Yeah. I'll tell our little recruiting thing. You CHROs, I'm going to scare you because this scared us and we're in security. A new trend we have seen literally in the last month or two is fully faked LinkedIn profiles, sending messages to people via a name they recognize. I mean, somebody is doing deep research. And we think we got them out fast. We had a couple of hires who weren't who we thought they were, who showed up in remote locations. So I think, buckle up, AI is going to start to now infiltrate your hiring, especially if you're doing a ton of remote hiring where no human has laid eyes on that person. Buckle up. we are shocked how fast that seems to be moving. And it's not just like, oh, clearly that's a fake. I mean, these were some deep, to use the term, deep fakes of people who looked and sounded viable, who had connections to and reference checks with other people. Somebody hopped on a Zoom, or Teams, and talked to a human, and that human was credible, but in the reality, that's not who showed up. So buckle up, HR people. It might get scarier fast in recruiting and hiring if you're doing remote hiring and some human hasn't. We have a new policy. Nobody starts till a human from the company meets someone in person, because we were going fast like a lot of you. Remote hiring all around the world, go fast, find talent. What if it's not the talent you thought it was? That's a new one. So, but yeah, Eugene, I think we are very attuned to the risks of how fast, and that's just on that side. The attacks against our customers and potentially against us using AR are everywhere. So.
There's a story on NPR last week where a scientist thought he was talking to his father over a period of 3 weeks, and it was deep fake to get intelligence from him on the project he was working on. But they had hijacked the father's telephone number.
Yep.
And
usually it's us getting faked. The fathers are the ones getting faked out if you're my age.
Yeah,
Hey,
no.
Dad,
I mean, the scientists, they had hijacked the elderly
elderly
father's telephone number. He lived overseas, and it spoken multiple times over 3 weeks, and it used a deep fake voice to steal information. It was about the a Chinese gambling mafia.
Yeah, no, it's going to get scarier fast on some of these deep fakes, both on voice, on online. I think all of you should kind of appropriately get people nervous in your org, if I were you. Don't panic, but just like if you see something, say something. Is that the cool phrase, right? Like if something, we had an employee who didn't look like they were named Rod Taylor show up in LinkedIn. Let's just say that person did not look like their name would be Rod Taylor. And so somebody said, is that really right? Yeah, I mean, just simple things like that. Just people are moving so fast and aggressively trying to hire and grow the company and all these great things. But boy, you've got to get people. It's the phishing thing that we're all really familiar with, but I think the phishing thing is the tip of the iceberg. It's about to get into deep fakes and challenges that are beyond what we thought was possible just a few years ago. All right, well, Eugene, what happens next? Are we done? Somebody come up? Okay, thank you.